What's something you found out about your SO years into the relationship that made you reevaluate the whole relationship? He told me from the very get-go that he was diagnosed with Asperger's in grade school, but I just brushed it off because I know how many people who half-heartedly claim to be autistic. But a couple of weeks ago, I was lying in bed while he was putting away one of his 50 pocket watches in his holding box that he keeps in pristine condition, tucked away in a sock drawer. Then he proceeded to pick out a new axe to carry in his backpack full of supplies, and for some reason, it just hit me for the first true time that he's totally 100% on the spectrum. And it made me think back to the times when he had done things that absolutely infuriated me and had no idea he had done something wrong. Suddenly I could see that he wasn't being manipulative or underhanded. His brain simply works in a different way than mine, and he even tried to warn me of this. I just for some reason chose to disregard the information. He's super willing to meet me halfway. Even when he doesn't understand why something bothers me, he acknowledges how I feel and he stops doing it. He's the goofiest, most eccentric ball of love I have ever met, and coming to terms with his autism has made me love him all that much more. Story 2. My now wife and I both love musicals. Whenever we're in New York City, we catch a Broadway show. If a good show tours to our city, we catch it. On one date, I offhandedly told a story about when I performed in The Wizard of Oz in high school, and she froze, eyes wide. "You performed in musicals?" she asked. Yeah, I replied. "Oh, I had no idea. This will take me a while to process." She was pretty quiet for about 20 minutes, then she said, "Okay, that's fine. I just never knew I was dating a guy who was in musicals. I never figured out why it threw her so much, but that was that and it never bothered her again." Story 3. She had been in contact with her exes, met them, and regularly cheated on me with whomever. 8 years. She was really good at hiding her tracks. I only found out because I contracted an STD. Curable, fortunately, from her. I was really glad we didn't have kids. I divorced her, moved away, and drank too much. Then I met the most awesome person in the world who I married, had kids with, and didn't know relationships could be this good. Story 4. He started hearing voices. We've been together since we were 11, experiencing everything together. I love and accept everything about him. Shortly after we moved in together, he broke down. He told me he couldn't stand hearing voices anymore. I helped him see a doctor about it. They evaluated him and diagnosed him with stress. In his words, he's pretty freaking stressed about hearing voices. After a while, he started admitting to me that he's terrified of mirrors. Why? Because the people on the inside will take him away. We went back to the doctor. Again, they told him, "You don't want to be diagnosed with something bad. It's just stress." There's nothing left to do but keep bringing him back until they believe him. It doesn't help that now he's convinced the doctors don't want him to get help. I can't really blame him for that. It was hard to adapt at first. I never would have pictured him going through such internal pain. The one thing that stood out to me was that he had spent so many years building my mental health up and doing anything he could to bring me out of depression. I had been so selfish for so long. How could I have not realized something was wrong? I was supposed to be the one person who knew him the most. Our relationship was imbalanced, and it was time for me to start picking up the slack. Ironically enough, we have an even stronger and healthier bond now. Story 5. She would lie about tiny, inconsequential things. Made me question my own perception of truth and self-instinct. Eventually, I caught her in a lie, and she denied it even when presented with full proof. It wasn't something huge, but it was something that opened my eyes a little. My friend swears I was being gaslit. Story 6. My wife and I have very few boundaries. Often, while we're having a conversation in a room, if one of us needs to use the bathroom, we'll just follow each other in and continue talking. If the conversation is good enough, poop won't hinder our dialogue. However, there are times when my wife is in the bathroom and locks the door. I always thought it was weird, but it didn't bother me. We've been married for 9 years now. We met at 15 and are now 28. We've grown up together, graduated together, traveled together. We know each other so well and have nothing to hide from one another. Or so I thought. This all changed one day. I was feeding our kids lunch and she was in the bathroom. Unbeknownst to her, she did not lock the door. When I walked in on her, I witnessed something that I never thought I would see. Something that lived in the back of my head, but I didn't think it could be real. My wife, of a 13-year relationship, 9 years of marriage, 3 kids together, was shaving her upper lip. She's Puerto Rican and has a little peach fuzz that you can't even really notice, but she was shaving it like it was a full-on mustache. She looked at me with this embarrassed look, and I thought to myself, what else is she hiding? I don't know that I'll ever look at her the same again. Story 7. Let me start by stating my wife has Asperger's. She didn't even know until we were married and we decided to tackle it together, but that wasn't what really shook me. 7 years into our marriage, a random conversation led to her revealing she never felt anything when we kissed. But she went along with it because she knew the importance of it as a romantic gesture. What the actual hell? I was flabbergasted, as our first kiss had left my lips tingling. To me, it was more than just the act. It was a genuine chemistry between us, but with her Asperger's, she couldn't process it that way. Hearing she went along with it because she knew it was supposed to mean something just broke my heart. Every single kiss suddenly felt like a lie, and I started questioning whether she actually loved me. It took months of therapy to reconcile and get reassurances that she did feel love. It wasn't just something she was assuming she should feel for me. It's been 4 years now, and we're still together. I've come to accept she just doesn't process her kisses the same way. Story 8. My wife and I married quickly without getting to know each other much. She was raised in a Mormon home and I had converted to Mormonism at 18. We played the roles of provider and nurturer in our marriage, according to the teachings of the faith. I left the faith about 6 years ago. She stopped attending about 2 or 3 years ago. The very difficult conversations when I left made us talk about things more than we ever had before. We dove deeply into so many aspects of her life, marriage, and desires for the future. I realized after years of marriage that she was actually an incredibly smart, dynamic woman. I loved her a lot before this. I always thought she was amazing, but because of the dynamics of each of her upbringings and the dynamic of the faith, I never realized how intelligent she was. I ask her opinion on things all the time now. We left her faith, ditched most of our baggage from our sexist upbringings, and I realized how great of a lifelong companion I have, and I'm ecstatic about it. Story 9. When I had my first child, the pregnancy wasn't a surprise or an accident. We talked and planned. I got a little overbearing during the pregnancy, like insisting on breastfeeding even without discussing it with me. I put it down to new dad nerves and not knowing any better. Turns out, that was only the tip of the iceberg. He believed that children were completely and totally a wife's responsibility. He wouldn't change a diaper. He wouldn't pick up the baby when it cried. No way would he get up in the middle of the night. He expected me to work a full-time job plus do all the childcare. At that point, I was confused and appalled, but I told myself we just needed time to adjust. I realized how delusional I was when the baby got sick while he was on a fishing trip. The doctors thought the baby had meningitis, so not just sick, but life-threatening sick. I called and asked him to come home. He refused. He paid for the 2 more days of fishing and didn't want to lose the money. Story 10. A little over a year after being officially together, I finally realized that she had a cancer gene in her family. Despite being crazy in love with her, this made me want to back out because I completely saw a future with her. Her grandpa and dad both had head and neck cancers, and 2 aunts and 1 uncle were survivors of ovarian and lung cancer. I knew I wanted kids, and she did too, so there was always this looming fear that our future kids might inherit it. Still, I went through with it because she mattered more to me than all my fears combined. Life plays a cruel joke, and despite having no vices and being only an occasional drinker, she got the big C as well. Head and neck, just like her grandpa and her dad. I lost her a little over a year ago. Still, no regrets. I still love her a lot. Story 11. 7 years into our relationship, and after having been married a year, my husband finally told me he was essayed by his older brother. It really threw the struggles of our intimate life into perspective. Knowing this now, I've done all kinds of research, found how to support victims' information, and I've changed how I behave. We're working on it. I tell him every time we're intimate that intimacy is an act of love and he's safe with me. We also have our safe word for general use if he's feeling overwhelmed. I truly think we're making progress. Things are better now. He's starting to understand that intimacy equals love in a marriage, and I want him, and I want him to want me. I even want him to be a little controlling when he feels up to it, among other things. He's grown a lot. He's a very strong person, and I'm immeasurably lucky to have him. Story 12. She told me when we first met that she was broken as she suffers from depression. I didn't brush it off, so to speak, but kind of just thought, yeah, whatever, it won't be that bad. It's not because I don't think depression is serious, but I just never, ever been in contact with someone with depression, so I kind of had no idea what it entails, if that makes sense. 5.5 years of being together later, and holy crap, depression is just super serious. I've been in situations I never imagined being in because of her and her depression. She's phoned me up twice while she was working in London. I live 60 miles away in Kent, saying she loves me, she's sorry, and she's going to end it. What do I do? I don't know what to do. Thankfully, both of those times she never went ahead with it, but still ended up in the hospital, and obviously I went up to her. Sometimes she's just crying and crying and crying and crying. Countless visits to the GP for talks and medication. Again, things I've never dealt with before, and at first, I was extremely uncomfortable about it all. The this isn't for me kind of thoughts. But the good news is, she's part of my life now. I don't mind all of the above anymore. She loves me, and I love her. What's even more amazing is that I'm the one that keeps her going, she says. This is life. I'm fully aware of the seriousness of depression. Story 13. He's a hopeless romantic. For the first year and a half of our relationship, he kind of kept me at arm's length emotionally. I always felt he had more power in our relationship because I fell in love early and was more demonstrative and gushy and yearny, while he seemed more measured and in control of his feelings for me than I could muster. Well, we've been married just over 3 years now, and I've discovered he has the heart of a poet. He's far more demonstrative and sappy and romantic than I ever was. I actually discovered this before we got married, a little while after we moved in together when he revealed he loved me too. But even now, after some years together, he'll make an effusive declaration about how beautiful he finds me or how much he adores me. It catches me by surprise and dazzles me, leaving me both breathless and speechless. It hasn't made me question our relationship, but it still blows me away how much he blossomed in our relationship and the way he shares with me a side of himself that wasn't very apparent for a long time. And every time I think of it and blush a little, thinking about how wonderfully silly he is about ordinary little old me, It further cements my conviction that I am the luckiest woman in the world. Story 14. I knew what time and even where she was when she logged into any of my social accounts. Not once did I ever bring it up in our 13-month relationship. However, I was always curious how she knew my password and why she always accessed my accounts. I had nothing to hide though, so I didn't mind. One day, somehow, we got into a conversation where she said she had caught me in some lies. I'm not sure what she was talking about, but my life is a little unusual, so I believe her that I may have told a few white lies at the beginning of the relationship. I then asked, "Have you ever lied to me?" She replied, "No." I followed up with, "Have you ever gone onto any of my personal stuff without my permission?" She said, "No, I don't even know your passwords to your accounts except your phone." That made me curious what else she was lying about. Story 15. Married 22 years. I found out this past weekend that my husband had decided we were at the pinnacle of our lives. We have a nice house, jobs, paid off cars, and so on. His goals now are to stay home and not at work and play a golf game or Fortnite from now on. He has no interest in travel or new experiences. He just wants to stay at home and play video games for the rest of his life. Now it sounds like most people's dream life, but it's certainly not mine. I want to go and do. I want to have amazing experiences and meet people. He's only 47 and has pretty much decided to become a hermit. Story 16. I found out 2 years into our marriage that he had lied to me about sleeping with other women when we'd first begun to date, including his ex. I had no expectations for developing a relationship at the time, but I did ask him to be honest with me if he was active with anyone else. I guess he didn't believe that I wanted honesty, so he never said anything. He was also drinking excessively. I didn't see him often enough to realize that. It wasn't until later on that I saw how much he was spending on alcohol and going out, but I was paying to keep his cell phone turned on so that we could talk long distance. I ended up in counseling because I didn't want to just walk out, but I felt so betrayed to learn all of this so long after I'd committed to him. Story 17. After about a year of being officially together, my now fiancé said that his mother was at fault for being in a cruel relationship with her boyfriend and let herself be harmed. It made it sound like it was her fault the boyfriend harmed her. I was so taken aback by this victim blaming that I couldn't talk to him for the next hour or so, reevaluating everything this sweet, caring man had said so far. So I sat him down and we talked this through. Funny enough, when I asked him whether he thought it was my fault that I had been on public transport, he said, "Definitely not." He accepted that it was not his mother's fault and has been kinder to her since. Story 18. He often had intimate dreams about almost every single guy he knew, and since he talked in his sleep, it was very easy to tell. I didn't realize it until about 4 months into our year-long relationship. It started with him having an intimate dream about his ex, which didn't really bother me because they had a history. Then about a month later, he had one about his RA, and there were a few other people he had dreams about. Finally, one day a few weeks before we broke up, he had an extreme intimate dream about his straight college roommate. Normally he'd just say the person's name and stuff, but during this dream I woke up to him calling me his roommate's name. I had to pull him off myself quite a few times before he finally stopped. Story 19. Seriously, I found out he was an alcoholic. We were already married and had children. When we were in our 20s, we drank at parties and we both got intoxicated, but not too crazy unless the people at our place warranted it. Then, of course, we drank casually with friends or at dinner sometimes, but nothing that would make me think he had a problem. Finally, I realized one day that it seemed like I'd get home from work and he'd be intoxicated, but there were no visible signs of drinking, like a glass out or a booze bottle anywhere. I became concerned when I thought maybe he was coming home from work, drinking, and then going to pick up the kids. Finally, he told me that he'd been doing a lot of drinking alone and was lying and hiding the bottles and the fact that he was drinking. Now he just doesn't drink at all. He slips every once in a while under anxiety and duress, and it's an issue, but we're working through it. I knew I needed to be there for him, but at the same time, I was really surprised how sad I was. I sort of had to grieve the fact that I couldn't drink with my husband anymore, and I wasn't sure if I could drink around him. We couldn't share wine at dinner or have champagne at New Year's. We couldn't get margaritas on the beach or buy beers to watch the game. It was really, really sad. Story 20. We were watching a Guess That Song video in bed one night, and the song YMCA played. She asked who sang that. I laughed it off, but she doubled down. My wife didn't know who the Village People were. I should have seen the signs that she was some crazy alien posing as human just to take over the world. I guess the first time would have been when she asked for a bite of my burger and then immediately bit the wrong side. Not the side I had a few bites from, but the completely opposite side. We had already been dating for a good 9 years at this point, so it wasn't a cootie thing. She's a freaking monster. Story 21. I've always wanted kids, but I've always been nervous about the idea. Like, when do I do it? What if I'm bad at it? Will I miss my freedom? 3 years into my relationship with my fiance, we were at a cookout and there was a little 7-year-old girl there. He was running around playing with her, being goofy, playing tag, and he was just so good with her. It occurred to me I'd never seen him interact with a child before. It lit up in such an amazing way, and that's when I realized I absolutely want to have kids with this dude. Story 22. After several years together, my ex told me nonchalantly one evening that he stole $500 from one of his best friends because he really needed it. This ex was a college-educated person trying to get into dental, medical, or pharmacy school. Not only was there no reason for this person to steal their friend's money, but I didn't understand how someone could do that and feel no remorse whatsoever, especially towards someone they considered a good friend. It was at that moment that I seriously began to believe I'd given my trust and love to a total sociopath. It was the catalyst that pushed me out of the relationship. I found out later that while I was working on a degree in another city, he found dates on Tinder, spinning lies about being in med school and owning a luxury condo overlooking the Wisconsin state capitol. He'd take girls for rides on my motorcycle and bring them back to the condo I owned. I don't know who or how many, but a neighbor specifically went out of their way to tell me what was going on. One of his Tinder dates was with a good friend's best friend, and I heard through her the lies about being rich and working in medicine. A high school classmate of his texted me to warn me of the same things. He hit on a girl at a reunion by saying he was in med school at Wisconsin, but the girl was actually in med school at Wisconsin and promptly told everyone about the exchange. When I went to kick him out of the condo, he told me that his mother had turned into a raging alcoholic and that kicking him out would mean he couldn't take care of her anymore. He stole a whole bunch of stuff from me, some of which he still has, and after all of it, he had the gall to text and ask if he could manage my finances for me at his new job in, believe it or not, wealth management. I guarantee you he's not stealing from every one of his clients, but when he said he stole from his friend, it really changed my opinion that he wasn't just an insecure millennial trying to find his way between college and the real world. He's a Class A raging narcissist, and holy crap am I glad he's out of my life forever. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 23. I worked as a street worker throughout college. He knew that way before we started dating and said it didn't bother him. Then about a year into the relationship, we were about to move in with each other. Around that same time, we went to a camping trip with our friends, about 4 other people. The 2 of us took our car and our friends drove up separately. The whole ride up to our camping spot, about 2.5 hours away, he was dismissive and didn't say a word. Even when I asked him questions, he would just be silent or give a one-word response. The camping trip was over 3 days and he didn't speak to me. I kept trying to pull him away from our friends to find out what the heck was going on, why he wouldn't interact with me, he wouldn't give me an answer. I cried every night because I would watch him interact with our friends all day and then we'd go to our tent and he'd completely ignore me. Finally, on the ride home, I freaked out and told him to pull the car over because I was getting out and finding another way home if he didn't tell me what the heck was going on. He pulled over in some random parking lot and was quiet for a few minutes. He then told me about how he found it disgusting that I was a street worker and that every time he looked at me, he felt disgusted. Okay? What? Somehow all of a sudden this bothers you and you out of nowhere decide to act on these feelings by ignoring me without explanation? Made no sense. Eventually we talked it through and for some stupid freaking reason, I forgave him. We moved in together and things just got worse. Anytime there was a problem they wanted to talk about, he'd lock himself in the bathroom or he'd get in his car and drive off and disappear for hours or sometimes until the next day. He'd yell at me for really absurd things. He was stressed out all the time. Then at our 2-year mark, he went and bought a chiropractic business without consulting me. I was expecting me to be excited for him, that he got his own business now and have his own practice. I feigned excitement, and he could probably sense it wasn't genuine. He got mad about that too, but deep down, I knew that the added stress of the new business would mean things would just get worse. He would be more stressed out, and we would be broke. I'd have to pay all our bills while we got things up and running in a steady patient base. Plus, all the time I'd have to spend helping him fix up the business, painting, buying furniture, setting up a new network, etc. I was already working 60-plus hours a week at the time. Plus, it meant we'd have to move closer to his new business. When he started yelling at me for not being excited for him, I tried explaining how selfish it was to make a huge decision like this without even thinking about how it would change my life. 6 months after opening his business, it got to the point where I just didn't want to go home. Every time we were home together, he'd be upset for some reason or another, and it got to the point that I was having panic attacks nearly every day. Right before we broke up, his dad told me that when my ex was in high school, he had to see an anger management counselor because of his outbursts, and his psychologist told his parents that he was likely a sociopath. Well, I guess I'd have to agree. Story 24. He's a massive mama's boy, in an unhealthy and weird way. Too much has happened to really get specific, but it's ranged from her inviting him to a sunset dinner on the beach to her adjusting his t-shirt when we saw her in the store the other day. He's 22 and hasn't lived at home for a bit over 6 months at this point. He refuses to see it, and she can do no wrong in his eyes. If I say anything at all, I'm accusing him of sleeping with his mother. Frankly, I'm still trying to decide if I want to be with him anymore. I can't marry him with this, so I'm not sure if I should keep the relationship going or count my losses and try to move on. Story 25. 15 years after the fact, I found out he had lied about the intimate nature of certain friendships of his. Adamantly, repeatedly, and steadfastly, and it wasn't of any consequence or beneficial for him to lie. In fact, it would have very helpfully explained at the time why these particular friends did things like sit on his lap, flirting and giggling very comfortably or intoxicatedly dialed so frequently, or some really weirdly romantic birthday cards. The fact that he'd been so adamant about the whole thing being a misunderstanding on my part and then years later tell me the real truth in passing, during a random conversation, under the auspices that I couldn't have handled it at the time, Just made me question everything about his approach to the truth, namely that it felt like it was up to him to shape it as it suited him. That's not how truth works, dude. Ultimately, our entire relationship was revealed to be a house of cards stacked on a hot, wobbly pile of BS. I'm pretty sure the first time I saw him truly cry real tears was when the judge told him how much he owed me in our divorce settlement. Story 26. I once dated a girl who I'm convinced had a severe case of Munchausen syndrome. She told me she was paranoid, an amnesiac, and schizophrenic at various points in our relationship. She, probably falsely, claimed her mother was cruel and her father was an alcoholic, and since they were divorced, I recommended she ask one or the other to take full custody, but she never made any effort toward this. She also faked the list for the first month of our relationship and denied ever having done so once she let it slip and talked normally. The final straw was when I heard from a friend of hers that she had claimed to have been coerced into doing substances by me. Story 27. For years, she pestered me for a puppy, even though we lived in a one-bedroom apartment. We had opposite schedules where I worked at the office during the day and she had a night shift as a server, so after a bit of convincing, I figured it would all work out as he would never be alone for too long. And we could always take him out for walks. So I got her the puppy she wanted, a puggle. Turns out she never walked him and barely took him out to potty. Within a year, our carpet was a nice shade of yellow and I would constantly find poop under our couch and behind furniture. Basically, she just wanted a living stuffed animal that she could show off but didn't need to take care of. We broke up shortly after. I lost a large security deposit due to the damage. She didn't want anything to do with the dog anymore, and my new living situation didn't allow for dogs, so we had to put him up for adoption. He went to a great family, but it still stings to this day that I couldn't give the little guy the life he deserved. Story 28. I found out he's gay. We married late in life. It was my second marriage and his fourth, or so I thought. Another long story. We eventually stopped having intimacy and had a lot of excuses, which made my self-esteem plummet. To make a long story short, I found gay corn in his computer, then got into his computer and found chats, etc. I confronted him and it was confirmed. I found a support group for mixed orientation marriages and we've now got an open marriage. We both date guys, lol. We're best friends, sharing a home and life together. It's not what I expected to be living, but most of life is that way. I'm lucky. Many women find out while the kids are still at home or after 30 years of marriage. I've been married 7 years and I'm really open-minded when it comes to stuff like sexuality and lifestyles. Actually, he's the lucky one, lol. Story 29. She often told me stories about her old clique in her hometown, and a lot of those were rather problematic for my taste, in the sense of, you spent time with these people? Willingly? In and of itself, that wasn't that big of a deal because we all have history and we all did some dumb stuff in our youth. But then I started connecting some dots. A certain guy who featured heavily in the worst stories, basically if everything she said was true, an individual with a history of SA and concerning tendencies who kept getting away with it because the clique kept covering for him every time someone threatened to call the cops. Had also been a regular on and off FWB'ers. Okay, so you knowingly, for years, were intimate with a guy who should be in prison for preying on multiple individuals, including close acquaintances. Great, now you repulse me, but alright, the past and all that. I know you've had issues. Give me a couple days and some strong alcohol and I'd get over it. But then, hey, you seem to get along great with X at my birthday party. I thought you hated him. You can't be shocked that I spent time with the guy and then get along with him yourself. Why would I hate him? I don't know, but... Oh, for goodness sake. Yeah, okay. No, that's enough. That's not past mistakes. That's ongoing foolishness. As far as I know, she at least didn't sleep with a guy or anyone else while we were together, but that's too far. I don't care if it makes me a control freak. The fact that you still think hanging out with Mr. Problematic when you visit your hometown is a good idea makes you, at the very least, a complete idiot and also despicable. I had to acknowledge that either she was making up horrific stories for fun, or her old clique was completely and utterly made up of complete subhumans and she still spent time with him. Other than her fabricating elaborate stories, other highlights included her best friend who kept trying to get her to cheat on me, lots of alcohol and bringing along new friends to her home when I was out, whenever she herself was single, which was unsurprisingly a regular occurrence, that thoughtless individual, the odd violent, intoxicated, and plenty more. At some point, if everyone you know is some variety of problematic, I can't help but question what that says about me. I couldn't help it. I dealt with a lot of her issues for years, but when all of that fell into place, it damaged my feelings for her irreparably. I still loved her, but I was completely unable to muster up any inkling of respect for or trust in her after that. That's not the kind of relationship I want to be in. Story 30. Her father, who is a doctor and the sole provider for her family, building the incredible house they all still lived in, needed a kidney 10 years ago and asked her mother, who said no, passed away soon after for want of said kidney, having had his wife turn her back on him. This was all explained to me as though there was nothing wrong with the story. And then all of the arguing about things that she doesn't understand and all of the selfishness reached a moment of perfect clarity, and I decided that I have to get the hell out of here. Story 31. It didn't make me reevaluate, but it was an eye-opener for sure. We were on a cruise vacation shore excursion and went snorkeling in the Dominican Republic. We jumped off the boat into about 20 feet of water, equipped with fins, mask, and snorkel gear. I'd snorkeled ages ago, and I'm a fairly strong swimmer, so I headed straight to the bottom to look around. After a few seconds, I realized she was nowhere to be seen, so I went back up to find her thrashing around like a small blonde bobber in rough seas. She said something about not feeling well because she had accidentally swallowed a bunch of water through the snorkel. I helped her back in the boat and sat her down. She was looking a bit green around the gills, but she seemed okay and waved me off, telling me to get back in the water. So off I went, thinking she'd join me when she felt better. She never got back in, saying she didn't feel well. We returned from our vacation, and 3 weeks later we were kind of rehashing the snorkeling incident. A light bulb valiantly struggled and finally lit up in my head. After 30 plus years with her, I never knew she really didn't know how to swim. Story 32. I didn't have much to do with my ex's parents for the first few years. This changed after we were married, and I discovered that she was basically a psychological carbon copy of her father. And I, her mother. The only problem with that was, her father was a domineering man who wore his wife down over many years to the point where she was basically mute and offered no resistance to him. What he wanted, he got. My ex was already showing a tendency to bully me into supplication, and I realized I was heading down the same path as her mother. I'd already started giving up trying to argue about anything with her. I saw my future quite clearly one day and left. Story 33. We had been married 8 years when he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and wasn't expected to make it past a year. I doubled down on my love for him and jumped into the exhausting and thankless role of being his caregiver. Made it a week past 3 years and passed away 7 weeks ago. I wouldn't change a thing except to go back and love him more, sooner, be more selfless, and take that damn vacation to Hawaii with him. I'll be bringing his ashes instead. This might not be what you were asking for, but it sure did cause me to reevaluate things and my role in a relationship. Story 34. I'm not sure if this is relevant to the question, but I'll share my story. She was my first girlfriend. I was 23, she was 19. First mistake. Anyway, my apartment had mold, so I moved in with her and her friends. They rented a house with 3 of her friends. Someone who used to live there was a dealer, but higher up than most kids. 3 people with guns broke into the house at 3 a.m. They pulled us out of the bed and threw us onto the bathroom while they robbed the place, looking for substances they thought were there. I had $1,500 worth of stuff stolen. Honestly, it really messed me up emotionally. Started to have PTSD symptoms. I told my girlfriend that I was struggling. She said she was there for me and she loved me. A week later, she starts cheating on me with a coworker. One night, I'm sleeping in her bed waiting for her to come home, but she never does. A few months of this BS followed, with her saying nothing was happening and that they were just friends, but they kissed before, no big deal. I took her on vacation to kind of start fresh. A day or 2 after being home, she starts hanging out with him again. She interestingly buys a few pairs of garments after hanging out with him. Whatever. She smelled like rubbers, which we didn't use. Blamed it on new garment smell. She then tells me she's going hiking with another male coworker, a different one. I said, cool, have fun, just don't drink with him because it leads to bad things. I wasn't backing down. Of course she ends up at a bar with him. I go to said bar and publicly and loudly break up with her. She spent the night at his place. She comes to my place the next day crying and begging me to take her back. I do. We have intimacy, then I realized all the time she cheated. I end it. She tells me nothing ever happened and I'm overreacting. I went through 2 years of hell, depression, hard substance use, super insecure after going through a hell of a first relationship. Then 3 years later, we somehow reconnect as we go to the same gym. She then tells me that she slept with a dude at the bar the night I broke up with her, hours before we had intimacy. Yeah, thank God I listened to my inhibitions and didn't continue to hurt myself by being with that cheating, lying, game-playing person. Story 35. She had cheated on me within hours of asking her out. We had been going out and spending time together for about a month. She really wanted to be in a relationship and I was a little on the fence, but we were having fun and I did like her, so I brought it up. She jumped for joy and seemed so happy that I had finally asked her out. Well, come to find out, she had a date set up after our date. No big deal, she was single and I had to go to bed early for work that day, but after our date, she was no longer single. And she went to that date and slept with that guy just a couple of hours after we decided to start a relationship. She kept this from me for about 5.5 years and then confessing it, along with something else she did that I don't blame her for. But this hurt. It was so long ago, we were completely different people then, but it still stung. After that, I tried to make it work, but it knocked off the rose-tinted glasses and I started to see all things that didn't work with us. It wasn't long after that when I knew I had to end it. Story 36. I've shared a lot of bad stories, but now I want to share my positive one. We had been together for 2 years and I was going through a deep depression. I thought that no one cared and I only saw the bad in people, including my girlfriend. I was seriously thinking of leaving her and just being alone forever. Later that day, I was in my bed, staring at the ceiling, and she came home. She had work that day. When I asked her why she wasn't at work, she told me that she had asked for a day off just to stay with me. She prepared hot chocolate and bought my favorite cookies. We just sat there, having hot chocolate and cookies and watching some Doctor Who. My favorite show. That day, I understood that she did care, more than everyone else. That day, I decided to marry her. My depression is mostly gone thanks to her, and just the thought that I was about to leave her because of my depression, man, I'm a very lucky man. Story 37. 6 years into our relationship, I learned that she stopped loving me roughly 2-ish years in and just faked the rest of it. She kept me around because I was able to fix almost everything in her family's house and was willing to build things for her when she needed props for the team she coached for Halloween. That, and I was willing to wake up at 4 a.m., drive my happy ass from Orange County to San Francisco, and then back in the same day to pick her up and make sure she was at her college campus for a midterm she had. Before I had learned about all of this, I paid for 3/4 of a 9-day trip to Orlando so that I could potentially propose. I didn't have enough money for the ring, so I decided to wait and just enjoy the trip. Got home, and about 4 hours after landing, she decided to unload her secret on me. I felt beyond used. We broke up. I bought myself a $400 bottle of scotch, a few cigars, and a new tattoo. I picked up and left California for Arizona and haven't looked back since. Story 38. Not sure if this counts exactly, but I was hanging out with an ex-girlfriend. Amicable breakup. Possibly a couple of years after we dated. I initiated the breakup. I thought she was boring or something, but really I was just immature. Anyway, she happened to casually mention that she once had her poem published in the child-oriented magazine Highlights. Perhaps you remember it being in every pediatrician's waiting room in the 70s. I'm dating myself. When she told me that she was not only a self-published poet, but got into Highlights, my childhood favorite magazine, I totally regretted breaking up with her. Remember, kids, don't be a goofus. Be a gallant. Story 39. Over the last couple of years, she's become increasingly frustrated with Western medicine. A lot of it stems from more and more doctors only wanting to treat symptoms and not try to address the underlying root of people's problems. I can't really argue with her there. There does seem to be a trend in modern medicine to get people in and out of the door as quickly as possible, so she's been exploring other options. Chiropractors, though she seems to have given that up. Alternative diets, etc. I'm fine with anything that's not a ton of money or too radical. So far, it's just resulted in us eating more salad and less lectins or whatever. The other day, she did mention that one of these diets claims to have cured cancer. I told her in no uncertain terms that if any of us got cancer, we'd be receiving actual medically sound treatment, and she would have to literally end me to stop it. And if she did manage to end me, I would come back and haunt her, which should carry even more weight since I don't believe in ghosts. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.